Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Sharifa, and my poetry name is New Lily. If you're new to the channel, please check out the links located in the description box and comment section. And in both locations, you'll find an identical set of links. Links that lead to videos that talk about what started my targeting in 2020, as well as links that lead to videos that share information about the targeted individual program, information about the tactics used on targets, information about the technology used on targets, and just information about the program in general, y'all. I've been going through this for 5 years. We're now in year 6, actually. So the targeting started in 2020. I had just graduated magna cum laude from college, and I moved home to teach. I had a teaching opportunity in Florida, but there were certain details that didn't align with what I was looking for at the time. I had just graduated and I did not have my teaching certificate. So what happened was I had an interview. Sorry, y'all, I'm hearing noise campaign in the background and I'm really in an annoyed mood right now. I'm just dealing with the same unfair abuse. It's day in and day out, all day long and all night long. These people are abusing me. So I had just graduated and I was teaching for Broward County Public Schools for 2 years while I was in school. And after I graduated, I got an interview with the county, and it was for a high school, MacArthur High School, out at Hollywood, Florida. And it was during COVID. It was 2020 when this took place, y'all. This was the year my targeting started. And that was the year I graduated. I didn't even get to walk that year. I didn't actually walk until 2022 when my younger sister graduated. We walked together. So anyways, I graduated, though I had my degree, and I was a good substitute teacher. And like I said, I had a 3.5 GPA, so it wasn't hard for me to get a job back then. I wasn't targeted. And I got an interview at one of the high schools I used to sub at. And so I spoke with the headmaster over the phone. It was a phone interview due to COVID, and I got the job that same day. I talked about this in my prior videos, y'all, because it's just such a drastic change from where I was to what's happening now, and where I'm being blackmailed about jobs and just abused. And if I have a reaction, if I have even a slight reaction, I'm getting black. It's just so unfair what's happening. So anyways, So what was going on was I didn't have my teaching certificate. So despite having been a substitute teacher, you don't have to be certified to be a substitute teacher. It's similar. Obviously, it's the same line of work, but it's different. Sometimes you create lesson plans, but not always. For the most part, as a sub, you already have lesson plans created for you by the actual teacher, and they leave it behind and they leave instructions for you, and you basically just get the students to do their work. It's not the same as being an actual teacher where you're creating lesson plans and orchestrating activities, etc., etc. So that's why you need to be certified if you become an actual teacher, because you need to know how to create lesson plans that are conducive for learning. You have to know how to manage a classroom. It's a different type of management to subbing. I've done both roles and it's different. Not to take away from substitute, right? From a substitute teacher, because they do have a serious responsibility. You are in charge of a classroom full of students. You are responsible for making them do their work, etc. But it's different. It's a different role. So even though I had that experience and I had my degree, I did not have my certification. And in Florida, that's what they require. In the United States, to my knowledge, every state is different, of course, but you have to be licensed, and it has to be licensure in that specific state. So I didn't have the license, but the person that interviewed me for the high school, MacArthur, liked me so much at the time. I'm sure they've contacted her now. She might have access to these cameras like everyone else. I think millions of people at this point now, y'all, have access to the cameras that are on me. It's just so crazy what's taking place. I haven't even committed a crime, y'all. And it's like America's Most Wanted, the stuff they're doing to me. You have people on this very island who have done way worse than me. I don't even want to judge anyone. I'm not. Everybody deserves a second chance, especially if you change. You have people who have done actual physical crimes who will never experience what I'm experiencing. Anyway, so let me continue, y'all, because it's an overdue and punishment, and it's wrong what's being done. It's completely wrong. Anyway, so what you did is you got a bunch of people that had problems with me that got together and decided to do this to me. Didn't commit a crime, y'all. Nothing of the sort. Completely unfair what's taking place. It's almost like there's no constitution. Anyway, so after I had the interview and she gave me the job right away. She liked me so much via the interview that we had that she forgot to ask me. I don't want to say forgot to ask me, but that detail just never came up. She didn't ask me if I was certified, even though I told her I had just graduated from college. She knew I was a substitute teacher, but I think it just didn't cross her mind. I think the conversation went so well. It went so well that I think that it really did not cross her mind until we started communicating via email and dealing with the paperwork. That was when she realized that I was not certified. So she found a loophole where she told me she would hire me on as an interim sub, which is another form of substitute. You are still a substitute teacher, but it's more of a permanent role where you are basically the teacher for the year. So what she was going to do was put me in the space of that English teacher position and let me teach as an English teacher, basically. But my title would have been interim sub and my pay would have been interim sub. And then to the side, I could have worked on getting certified. That was the condition. And I was picky back then. I wasn't targeted. I didn't know what it was like to be blackmailed and you can't get this job and that job. I didn't know that feeling. I got jobs like nothing. It was easy for me to get a job back then. So I was picky and I was like, nah, I think I can find a better offer is how I felt. So I remember talking to my mom about it and she encouraged me to come home because she was teaching for the Department of Education down here. And I had taught for the Department of Education down here in the past as a sub. Well, technically the term was para-educator or paraprofessional. I was not an actual teacher back then, but similar role, substitute teacher. Actually, I used to work one-on-one with students that had special needs, high-functioning IEP students. Anyway, so I ended up deciding to move home in 2020 because my mother was telling me that down here for the Department of Education, if you want to become an actual teacher, they'll allow you to become a teacher and give you something called a provisional certification. So it's a certification where you are certified to teach, but the provision is that you have to fill the requirements of that certification, taking the praxis, certain courses, whatever. You have to do that by a certain time frame so that the provisional certification can turn into an official certification. So I thought that was a good idea. I wanted to be an actual teacher. I wanted the pay. I wanted the title. And I wanted to really, I don't know. So I came home. I moved home and that was what started the targeting. I sent a text message, an innocent text message. I had been dealing with this weird situation in some Airbnbs I was staying in before I moved home. I was dealing with some weird situations in some long-term Airbnbs I was staying in for about half a year. Actually, before I moved to those Airbnbs, there was half a year where I was staying in multiple Airbnbs. I used to move like every 2 weeks and stay in different Airbnbs because I didn't want to stay in the dorms. I didn't feel like I had enough privacy in the dorms and I didn't like how the bathrooms were kept. They were loud. They were younger than me. I was older. I was an older student. When I got my bachelor's degree, I was 26 at the time. So when I went back to school, I was 26. I was 28 when I graduated. Anyway, so I just didn't like what was going on in campus. So I decided to, instead of getting an apartment down in South Florida, it's extremely expensive to try to get an apartment. And I was a substitute teacher. I was working off of a substitute teacher salary. So I decided to get Airbnbs, thought that would be cheaper. My mom suggested that that's what I do. That's what I was doing. And then she said, why don't you see if one of these people you're staying with can, rent the Airbnb to you long term. So that's what I decided to do. I spoke with this Cuban guy that I was staying with. I had stayed in several Airbnbs for him and I had a good repertoire. And he had done the same thing for a prior college student. So he didn't mind doing it for me. Listen to my full story, y'all. I'm not meaning to tell the story again. I just want you to understand how something so innocent led to 6 years of imprisonment. And that's what I'm trying to get you to understand. And they will not stop. They will not relinquish their hold on me. And I'm being tortured 24/7 and then gaslit when I have reactions and threatened and blackmailed about jobs. Anyway, so just listen to my story, y'all. I'm not meaning to tell the story again. The link is in the description box and comment section. There's links to videos that talk about what started my targeting. There's like 5 different videos where I told my story. There's like an 11-hour video compilation, and then there are other videos, like shorter videos, where I told my story of what happened to me and what led to where I am at now. So anyways, whatever situation I did end up in with the Airbnbs, because for half a year I stayed in multiple Airbnbs and I got tired of moving every 2 weeks. And so I took my mom's suggestion and I spoke to one of the people I had rented from, that I was renting from at the moment, actually. Him and I had a good repertoire, like I said. And he allowed me to stay in an Airbnb for him long term. And so this misunderstanding happened. The Airbnbs were super packed and close together. It was like 2 rooms that were attached to each other via a door. And it was connected to the back of this main house. And this happened during the daytime too. So you have to know I wasn't trying to break into these people's room as a big grown woman who's in school, who's never gotten into trouble before. Y'all, this is fake ref campaign. Look at this. Look at this thing here now. Driving on the street. Of course, he's looking down now. He acting like he can't even look up. He's half his head down. He's hiding his face. It's the same older Rasta man. I'm sure he's a friend of my dad, because that's who's torturing me in this neighborhood. A lot of these people are my dad's friends. Anyway, so, and they know I didn't do anything, y'all. If you listen to my videos, you'll hear that the theme of my targeting is bearing false witness. And although they know I've learned the lesson at this point, they're still just torturing me nonstop. Like, there's no end to it. At this point, they know I've learned the lesson. They just want to keep torturing me. So anyways, it's ridiculous. So anyway, so I have this OCD with bathrooms. Like I told you, that was one of the main motivating factors for why I wanted to get out the dorms, because it was like this shared bathroom and these younger females and a lot of nasty shit was going on in the bathroom. Like I'm talking period blood, poop smeared on the seats, drunk nights where they're coming into the dorm and they're shitting everywhere. Like it was just a lot of craziness going on in there, even though it was a nice campus. It was a private university. That's what was happening inside the bathroom sometimes. And I have bathroom OCD and all this other stuff like that. So in this new Airbnb, like I said, it was 2 rooms connected to each other. And it was divided by like this connecting door that didn't open to my knowledge. And then the 2 rooms were in the back of this main house. The houses were super packed together. Actually, it was very similar to the neighborhood I'm living in now. It was a neighborhood in Miami Gardens, actually. Well, it was not Miami. It was right next to Miami Gardens. It was basically Miami Gardens. So anyways, I had this sliding bathroom door and it couldn't close. It wasn't like a regular door that closes. It slid closed, and so there's this huge gap in the door, and I felt like I couldn't swallow my spit. I know this sounds weird, y'all. This is one of those quirky things about me, but it's not something that deserves 6 years of punishment. Anyway, so I can't swallow my spit if the bathroom's open. I have to spit or my mouth starts pooling up with spit. Sometimes if it's like a situation where I'm out and it's like there's no way for me to spit, I'll force myself to swallow my spit, but it's like really uncomfortable for me. So anyways, I realized the door had this big, huge gap, and it was like bothering me. I felt like I couldn't swallow my spit comfortably in the apartment. And so I remember telling my mom and my sister about it. And I said, well, why don't you just ask him to move you to a new Airbnb? I didn't want to do that. I liked the location. At the time, I wasn't targeted. I didn't know what it felt like to have neighbors on top of you doing annoying, antagonizing things. So I actually liked having neighbors as a young female back then. I liked having neighbors in close proximity back then. So I didn't want to move. And I also liked the location. It was just like a nice, quaint type of neighborhood. So I ended up and I had already moved all my stuff into, y'all. I had already moved all my clothes and stuff into the apartment. Well, it was like a room, but it was basically like an apartment. It had a fridge, it had like an electric stove, a mini stove, it had a bathroom, I had my bed, a closet, TV, whatever. So anyways, I remembered saying, you know what, let me just like block up the door with a sheet. And I had done this on prior Airbnbs, y'all. There was no connecting door, so it didn't create an issue. There was one Airbnb I stayed in prior to that where I had went to the Dollar Tree and I purchased plastic, and I had actually taped the plastic above the door because it was a similar door to this one. And my sisters came in and they were laughing at it because they know me. They grew up with me. They know this is an OCD I've had my whole life. So anyways, I really got to use the bathroom, y'all. I stuffed up the door with the sheet. And while I'm doing that, through the connecting door, I can hear the elderly couple start like pushing stuff up against the door and moving around. Like I think they thought the noise they were hearing, me stuffing up the crack in the door, I think they thought that was me trying to get in their room or something. I mean, common sense should have told them that wouldn't be the case though, because we were connected to this big, huge house and people were inside. And it was a very close-knit neighborhood during the daytime where a lot of people were home. So what idiot or mentally ill person would try to break into your room during that time with that circumstance? It doesn't even make sense. But anyway, I think they had a warped perception of whatever it is they were hearing by the door. They probably couldn't figure out what that stuffing sound was, and so they probably thought that was me trying to get through the door or whatever they thought. Excuse me, I need to blow my nose, y'all. So it was a complete misunderstanding due to an OCD. And it created this uncomfortable environment where anytime I started moving in the room, they started making noises by the door and pushing stuff up by the door. It was just this weird thing. And it lasted for a couple months before I finally asked him to move me to a new unit. I still wanted to work with him because I liked him as a person, but I wasn't comfortable in that unit. It just continued to happen. This is why I actually thought it was witchcraft. Because what started the thing to what it actually turned into, and now there's a program where they do that anyway, where they do noise campaigns on you. It's just weird. It's really weird how the thing started and what it turned into. Like, I just can't wrap my mind around it. So that's why you start thinking all these what would sound like conspiratorial thoughts, because it's like, how did my life turn into this? Over something so simple. And they won't let me go. So anyways, I forgot what I was going to say now, y'all. So I'm going off on a tangent. I'm not meaning to. So just know it turned into this thing in that Airbnb where they're doing noise campaigns on me, similar to like what happens in the targeted individual program. But I wasn't targeted. It's the weirdest thing ever. So anyways, I end up in another unit for the man. And at this time I was dating a Colombian guy, and I asked him to move in with me only because I was spooked about what happened in the last Airbnb, and him and I were dating anyway. We had been dating for about a month. Not that long. That's relatively quick to move in with a man. I would never typically do that. But I was, like I said, a single female, living in Miami, driving to school. I used to have to leave late at night because I was doing security as well. So I was doing security at night, and I was a substitute teacher during the daytime, and I had a full schedule of classes. So it just felt comfortable having a man living with me at the time. So he actually moved in to my apartment with me. I asked him to. So anyways, he stayed there for a couple months with me, and he was even hearing some stuff. You know, there was this unit right next door. There were several units. It was not the same as the last Airbnb I had left. This was a different type of neighborhood. But he had like this whole compound with different units that were very close together. And so the unit he put me in was separate from the other units. It was like right across from the other units, but still in close proximity. But there was this wall inside my unit, and through the wall was this room. It was like a maintenance room where the maintenance man would go in sometimes, and I thought there was equipment in there to deal with, you know, the unit and the compound, but some nights it would sound like he was staying in there. And so I feel like whatever the elderly couple told the guy that I was running from made him wary of me. I think he was like seeing one thing, and when he talked to me and spoke to me, I think that's why he rented to me again. I think he saw that I was a normal person, but he heard whatever craziness he heard from them. And so I think he was wary, and he put somebody in that room to monitor. I really think that's what happened, because that's what started happening. I started hearing like sometimes slight. It wasn't as bad as when we were living, when I was living next door to the elderly couple, but it was still kind of like this monitoring thing, and like I'm hearing noise campaigns in this room next door. Even my ex-boyfriend even heard it before, and he used to just be kind of brushing it off and not taking it as anything. But I was hearing it and noticing it because I had just come from the other Airbnb where the thing was happening. So he was taking it as, you know, something that wasn't that serious, and he just kind of shrugged it off like he didn't care. And for me, it was weird to me that I'm hearing like this monitoring thing going on, even in the wee hours of the morning. This is supposed to be a storage room. It's sounding like the maintenance man is in there. Like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., I'm hearing stuff. Like I wake up and, you know, some movement happens in my room, and I'm hearing stuff through the wall. It was just strange to me. So that happened, right? And it was uncomfortable for me. I still stayed there for a good few months. I stayed there. And then my older sister ended up purchasing this house in this like kind of rough neighborhood. But that's why she purchased it. It wasn't purchased like she bought the house. She rented the house out and decided she was going to do Airbnb from it. And so the house was in a rough neighborhood, but it was cheap and it was a nice house. And so that's why she did it, because she realized she could rent it out. There would be people that would purchase or rent out an Airbnb just for the cheapness, because Miami is so freaking expensive, and South Florida. This was in Fort Lauderdale, but these are all connected areas, and they're all expensive places to stay. That's why they call Florida the vacation state. It's like a melting pot of different island cultures. It's a tropical environment. They call it the retirement state and the vacation state because it's that type of vibe and it's expensive to live there. So anyways, so she told me, well, why don't you come, basically like be her first customer? She had this, like I said, this house she was renting out and she was going to lease out or rent out the 3 different rooms. It was a 3-bedroom house and she was going to rent out the 3 different rooms to different people and make money. And she was going to use the money to pay the rent and also get some sort of back end profit from it. So that's what she and her husband decided they were going to do. So she said, well, since you're having issues with this person, why don't you just move in to my Airbnb and I'll give you like a cheap rate. So that's what she did. She let me keep, the back room. I got the room that was separate from the other rooms that were in the main house, but it was connected to the kitchen. It was directly connected. My door was like literally separated from the kitchen. So I said, okay, sure, whatever. She and I stayed together. There was no issue. She stayed in the room with me a couple nights. Everything was normal. This lady from Chicago decides to move down, right, to Florida. I don't know if she got in trouble in Chicago where she was at. I don't know what the situation was with her, but she comes down, right? She moves down. When she moves down, the first night she stays in the Airbnb, blah, 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 she's just super loud. Like we took it as her just being excited to be in Florida. Because obviously Chicago and Florida are 2 drastically different states. They both have their benefits, their perks, and their pros and their cons. But if you're coming from up north and, and now you're getting to come down to the Sunshine State and you get to party in the island vibe or whatever, I can understand. I'm young too. I'm not that old, y'all. I just made 34 last month. And this lady was way older than me, by the way. She was in her early 40s at the time. So that was back then. I think she was, I think if I'm not mistaken, like 40 or something like that. And back then I was in my late 20s. So she was significantly older than me. So anyway, she's doing this party thing and she blah, 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 and loud stuff, whatever she's doing. And she was smoking, the rules in that house, in that Airbnb was not to smoke in the house. They didn't really want the smoking in the house. They didn't really put that set rule down. But that was something that they eventually did make a rule because the ventilation system was all connected. And so she'd be smoking up, which is not a problem. If you smoke, that's your business. This is what made smoking become a thing in my targeting, partially. If you smoke, that's your business. I don't care what you do. It was just that it was coming up through the AC and it was coming into the room. And so it was almost like I was getting major secondhand. I might as well buy a pack of cigarettes and start smoking my damn self. And I don't smoke. So anyways, that was something she was doing. She was smoking up a storm. She, the first night, like I said, she was partying super loud and it was going into the wee hours of the morning. It was like 4 a.m. And my sister and I woke up, because she was being so loud and we were like, dang, what the heck? But we didn't say anything. It wasn't a problem. We understood that this was her first night. And at the time, it wasn't a long-term thing for her. She was supposed to be visiting and then going back to Chicago. And so I said, I don't know if she got in trouble or what the story was, because it was some sketchy story with her where she ended up staying long term. And the story, it was a weird story that wasn't fully making sense. Anyway, nonetheless, she ended up staying long term in the Airbnb and, creating like this contract thing with my brother-in-law and my sister where she wanted to stay long term. So it's just this thing where every night was a party for this lady. I'm in my freaking late 20s. I'm not a freaking granny or party pooper. They used to call me a party animal back in the day, my older sister and I, because we used to party all the time with the cousin. There's this cousin that comes down to visit sometimes. We used to be close back then. The relationship's completely different now. But back then we were thick as thieves. We were very close. Everything was normal. We were like sisters, all of us. And we used to go out all the freaking time. Like everybody on the go out scene pretty much knew us back then because we were always going out here on island. So it's not like I'm this party pooper granny type person. It's just that I was older at the time. I was in my late 20s, even though she was significantly older than me. I was in my late 20s. I was in school and I was working 2 jobs. So I can't have you here all night long. This is why I left the dorms. I might as well just stay in the damn dorms. Every night you're partying into the wee hours of the morning to the point where I can't sleep. So that was the only issue initially. It wasn't the other weird stuff that I was dealing with in those 2 Airbnbs for the Cuban guy. Now, mind you, let me remind you, before I stayed with that Cuban guy long term, for almost half a year, I was staying in multiple different Airbnbs and I had no issue. I had a high rating on Airbnb. I had no issue. It was simply that misunderstanding with the bathroom that happened with him that I think created some sort of suspicion, because the elderly couple told him whatever they told him. And then he moved me to the new Airbnb. He still worked with me because we had a good repertoire. But I think there was some suspicion there because of whatever it is that they told him. So I had to deal with the maintenance man monitoring me in the room right next door. So anyway, I moved to this new Airbnb, having dealt with that for a couple months and feeling weary about it now. You know, it was just like it created this weird thing, but that didn't start immediately in my sister's Airbnb. It was weird how it happened. So anyway, the girl was partying every night. Her and I barely made contact. I had my own door where I could exit out. It was like a private entrance. So the only time she and I would even have to make contact was if I crossed over into the main house to go in the kitchen. And I only went in there to put stuff in the fridge. I didn't have my own fridge at the time, and so I had to go over there sometimes to go in the fridge. Other than that, I did not cross over into that apartment because I'm such a basity shy person, and she was such this loud party type thing, you know, like I just, I used to just stay in my room. I didn't really know what to expect with her, right? So anyways, y'all, the partying ensued. It was about 2 weeks of her partying all night long, all day long. Y'all, here noise campaign started. Of course, it's the house with the man, the same house. Let me talk about him, y'all, because since he wants attention, right? So there's a house at the end of the street. I'm not meaning to go off on a tangent, y'all, but of course, this is what I'm talking about when I say spite and why they're not letting me go. You have several people like him who are holding grudges for things they started. And that's why I'm being punished. So at the end of the street, there's this older man that lives there with I think he lives with his mom. His mom looks very old, like much older, like maybe 80s or 90s. I don't know. That age range. He looks like he's around my dad's age, maybe a little younger. Like he's looking like, you know, early 60s, late 50s, anywhere from late 50s to early 60s is what I would guess this man's age is. I don't know. That's what it looks like, right? So another one of these people that's friends with my dad in the neighborhood. Before I left, before I tried to relocate off island in 2022, y'all, because we're going to fast forward in the story and you're going to hear what ensued, what eventually manifested from the Airbnb situation in Florida, what led to 6 years of targeting. Anyway, so because I cannot believe it that they're still torturing me for this. And then it's like these unfair tactics too, where they're torturing me and then I have a reaction and then I'm getting threatened about not getting a job. Like, it's just unfair. So anyways, I forgot what I was saying. Oh yeah, so because I heard a door. That's what distracted me. I heard the door. So anyways, I'm not meaning to fast forward in the story, y'all. This is what they do. They do noise campaigns to distract you, especially if you're making a good point. Like, why are you still doing this to me? Why am I being targeted still, other than spite? Anyway, so nonetheless, I'm gonna get back to the Airbnb story. So remember where I'm at in it. I'm staying in my sister's Airbnb now, right? I haven't retold this story in a minute. It's been a while. But I feel like I need to talk about it because it's so unfair, the state of my life right now as a big 34-year-old woman, what I'm dealing with. And it's just been like months and months and years of unfair stuff. But recently it's been real bad. Like the last few months, I told y'all it was some extremely unfair activity. Anyway, so pause in the story. Back in 2020, when I was staying in the Airbnbs for my sister, and I was about to graduate from college and I was working the 2 jobs, and I'm in the Airbnb with this loud lady that came down from Chicago. Pause the story. Let me talk about this man at the end of the street that just turned on his engine and is doing noise campaign. I don't even know if it's him or if it's one of the people, entities that live in his house, because the whole house has it in for me now because of something he started. So anyways, with him now, like I said, his age range looks like late 50s to early 60s. So around there. Like, he looks a little younger than my dad. Like, maybe my mom's age, like early 60s. My dad is in his mid 60s. My mom is in her early 60s. They're 4 years apart. It looks about, you know, that age range, man. Right? So fast forward in the story, I'm targeted now. I came home from the Airbnb situation. I sent the text. I became a target. If you listen to my full story, you'll know the whole story, right? I'm fast forwarding because I want to talk about this man. I'm going to get back to where I was in the story with the lady from Chicago. So I was down here for 2 years. The targeting had started in 2020 when I moved home and decided to come home to teach. In my household, there was this big tumultuous fight that took place in the household, and everyone was like, they were turning against me because of this fight that took place back then. What happened is I came home and my mom was complaining because my younger brother was in school with me at the time, and my younger sister. My other brother hadn't started college yet, and the two of them were not doing too good in school. And so my mom was complaining to me because she felt like I wasn't like making them do good in school. Like she does this. She was even doing it to my younger sister. When my younger sister finally got her shit together, then she was doing it to my younger sister and trying to make her get on top of my younger brothers instead of getting on them and making them be responsible for themselves. Not to come, because my mom really looks out for us and she, good mom and everything like that. But I think she babies the younger ones. All of us realize that she babies and enables the younger ones, and that's why they have some of the issues they have. But anyways, I don't want problems. So that was the thing. Like, she was constantly getting on me back then because she felt like I wasn't making them do their work, or I wasn't making them go to the library, or whatever. She felt like I could have done more. I said, what do you mean? I said, there were times where I invited my younger sister to come in the computer lab with me because I used to stay in a computer lab all night long writing papers. There were times like that. Actually, she switched majors. Before she became a finance major, she was in accounting. And there were a couple of times where she was showing me the work and I understood it. And I helped her with it. And she said, wow, you should get into accounting. And she said, I'm realizing I like the math element more than the reading and writing element of it. And so oddly enough, it seemed like with finance, there was more math than there was reading and writing and comprehension. So that's why she switched majors. But when she was doing the accounting, there were a couple of times where she came to me and I was understanding the material. So anyways, I did what I could do, but I'm not going to baby you. My younger sister, you have to understand, is 4 years and change younger than me. So we were living two completely separate lives on campus. We used to be called the nurse sisters or the nurse twins because when we were walking together, we were so close in stature and in complexion that people just kind of used to use that word, which is such a coincidence because now they're gang stalking and using the word twin, but we don't even really look that much alike if you look at us good. The same thing used to happen with my older sister. She's shorter than me and not even the same complexion as me. And they used to be calling us twins because when we move together, we move in sync. And so sometimes she and I would go to the cafeteria together and eat, or we'd go hang out together. But at the same time, we were living two completely separate lives on campus. I was older and more focused, and she was still younger, even though she was an older student on campus as well. Remember, I said I was 26 when I went back to school. She was 22. So we were both older, but she was still young. You're still young at 22. You still want to party and do all this stuff, man. You still could fit in with the younger folks on campus. Shit, there were people my age that were still partying, but I was more locked in because I had a down period in my early 20s, and so I had to pay my way back into school. My mom wasn't doing all of that. Like with me and my older sister, when we fibbed up in school or messed up in school, it was, oh well, figure it out, is what it was. And so I had to figure it out. And so I worked my way back into school, and I paid out of pocket to get back into school. So I really cared more. I was more focused. I knew what it felt like to sit out for years and feel like you're not where you want to be in life. So I was focused and I was doing what I had to do. And she was kind of more or less so partying and hanging out and doing whatever she was doing. So there were moments where I would try to invite her to come to the library with me, but that was short-lived. It was like one night she came with me to the library. I can't tie her up and say, hey, no partying, come to the, what? What do you want me to do? So anyways, and my younger brother was really off the radar. He's way younger than me. Like, I didn't even associate it in a way. He was in the male dorms. He was in the male dorms, and I'm all the way over here in the female dorms. I barely used to see him unless I was giving him a ride to the grocery store because I had a car. So anyway, she was getting on me for that. I think she had an annoyance with me for that. So she kept doing this thing where I would take the car. There was a car there. My uncle had this car, my grandparents really, that we ended up getting possession of when they left Island. Whatever else ended up happening, my grandpa kind of gave the car to us. And so it was just this car that we all used. It was this miscellaneous extra car that we all used. So when I got back on Island, I was excited. I hadn't been home in so long. This was 2020, y'all, the year my targeting started. So I like to drive. They see me doing it now. Even now, I have an issue where I like to drive if I'm not. It's only because I'm not making the type of money I used to make when I was a teacher. And I'm driving a gas guzzler Jeep. That's the only reason I'm not driving up and down all day long just to avoid being home and dealing with noise campaigns. I like to drive. Even now, still with that being the case, I drive a lot. They see it. I'd be driving through the rainforest. I drive this way, that way. I just like to drive. I like taking nature walks and hikes and drives into nature. I like doing that type of stuff. So anyway, I was taking a drive with the car. I would take the car and just drive because I hadn't been home in years. And I didn't have the trauma I have now, or the stigma I have now, to the island. Like back then it was home. This is home, and I wanted to drive up and down and see the island. So that's what I was doing. And every time I come home, I'd be gone for a couple hours. I come home and mom's like, were you drinking? I'm like, huh? I haven't drank in years. I just graduated magna cum laude. You were actually just complaining to me about not making them go to their classes or whatever the case is. Am I like that was irking me? I felt like she was just doing that on purpose, like I don't know. That's what I felt back in then. Whatever I felt, whatever feelings I felt about it, it just really bothered me because I felt like you're not acknowledging really that I actually did really well. Instead, it feels like you're just nagging me about stuff that's out of my control, and then now you're asking me if I drank when that's a sensitive topic and that's not something I haven't really done in years. So I just remember having this big fight. We had this big fight in the house, and it turned into this big weird thing. After that fight, that's when things really got weird, and that was shortly before the targeting started too. It was this big fight, and everybody kind of turned against me in the fight, and I yelled out certain things, and that's kind of what started where I'm at now, to be honest with you. So anyways, after the fight, I noticed I was staying in the room with my nieces. I was staying in the room with my two nieces, and this has happened many times before. I've lived with my older niece. I basically raised her. I've babysat her many times by myself. So anyways, I was staying in the room with my two nieces, and it was nighttime, and I just felt like I was hearing noise campaigns in the hallway, similar to what was happening to me in the Airbnbs. I don't know if it was just PTSD and trauma, and I was paranoid because we had this big fight and everyone was moving kind of different in the house. I don't know if it was just people were up late moving, doing stuff, and I just trauma from what happened to me in the Airbnbs, and then also just like this feeling of estrangement because of the big fight. I don't know what it was, but it just felt weird. Like I felt like I kept hearing somebody walking by the door, and jingling keys, or, this is where the key thing came from in my targeting. This is where the key, this is where the stupid key thing came from, where they tie it to the false narrative that they created from the text message. So anyway, I remember one night, like, just being fed up with what I thought was noise campaigns. And so I sat there and I foolishly, this is the biggest regret I have in my life, y'all. There are many. This is one of the top biggest regrets. Like, there is nothing that tops this. This is the biggest regret I have in my entire 34 years here on this earth, was composing and sending this text message. So I wrote this long litany to my mom, basically telling her that, I said, I know we got in a fight or whatever. I can't remember verbatim what I said, y'all. At this point, it was almost 6 years ago. But, this is the gist of what it said. Me basically saying, I know we got in the fight, and I feel like I'm hearing noises outside now at nighttime. I said, I know y'all wouldn't gaslight me, right? I didn't accuse them. They're making it like I sent this text saying, how could you all start doing noise campaigns on me now that we got in this fight? This and whatever. I could see if I said some crazy shit like that. I basically just said, now I'm hearing noises in the hall. I said, I know y'all wouldn't gaslight me, right? I said, I can't remember exactly what I said in the text message, but it was stupid. It was dumb. I should have never sent that text message. I shouldn't have sent it, man. Anyway, after I sent the stupid thing and I hit send, I remember my mom coming to confront me about it, and she had this diabolical look on her face, and I just knew my life had changed for good, not forever. Excuse me, let me not say the wrong thing, and your words are powerful. I rebuke that in the name of Jesus Christ. But I felt a shift. I knew after sending that text something major had happened. I didn't even know how major. I didn't know how many years ahead of torture that was going to come from this text message, but I knew something major had shifted when I hit send, and she came to me to confront me about it. I just felt this energy like I was in big doo-doo. So anyways, after I sent the text, oh my God, that was when they really hardcore started to, for sure, it was not even a question anymore. I know I'm hearing stuff now. They're doing noise campaigns and all kinds of crazy stuff in the hallways, and it turned into this, it really got bad. It was 2 years of torture. Anyway, y'all, I skipped ahead in the story because I wanted to tell you about this man at the end of the street, This was a tangent. He messed up my whole story because I was actually back at the point where I was still in Florida before I came home, where this lady from Chicago came into the Airbnb for my sister. Because I want you to know, eventually the same noise campaign thing that was happening in the Cuban guys too Airbnbs started happening in my sister's Airbnb, a whole separate Airbnb with a whole separate owner, a family member. That's why I thought the thing was witchcraft. It was just weird how it played out to the point where it manifested into what it did. But I fast forwarded from that point of the story to Heron Island because I wanted to talk about this man at the end of the street that had started up the engine to do noise campaigns spitefully. Anyway, so I'm going to get to him in a minute because he's irrelevant in the grand scheme of things and he messed up my whole story too. And I'm telling the whole story again. I've already told this story before, y'all. I have multiple videos where I have told the same story. Nothing changes. It's really just what took place today. It's just like, I'm tired of it, man. I am so tired of what I've been dealing with. It's been 6 years of torture. And it feels like I'm almost being blackmailed about a job. Like, they see me doing everything I'm supposed to do to get the job back. Every so often, if I'm getting tortured bad enough and I have a nasty enough reaction, they'll send a hint like I'm not going to get the job. Like, that's not fair. So anyways, y'all. So I forgot what's going on here now. So let me talk about this lady in Chicago. Let me go back in the story, y'all, because I fast forwarded to the moment where I sent the text and the targeting started because I wanted to fast forward to the part where this man had a brief moment in my existence, and it's like his whole house is now participating hardcore in my gang stalking. Anyway, so back to the lady in Chicago. So for 2 weeks straight, it was like, you know, after that first night when she came and my sister was in the room with me, she heard how loud the lady was being. All night long, she's partying and, you know, smoking cigs and it's coming through the AC vent and all this type of stuff like that. No offense to anyone that smokes cigarettes. If you smoke cigarettes, that's your prerogative. For me, it was a problem because, like I said, it's a central AC unit. And so it was coming up through it into my room. So you're doing all these noises and then it's like I'm having secondhand cigarette smoke, and y'all know by now I'm a health nut, right? I wasn't always on point throughout the years. There were moments where I was eating junk and off my damn self. But I am really into health and natural health and stuff. And so I didn't really want to smoke the secondhand cigarette smoke. And so all of that was like, you know, a problem. So after about 2 weeks of her partying like a rock star every freaking night, I had to tell my sister. I said, listen, this lady is, you know, the same first night how she was. I said, every night she's doing this. I said, I'm not even able to rest or anything because what's going on. And so my sister talked to her husband and her husband talked to the lady, and she made a conscious effort to stop being loud. Like, I noticed a complete shift in how things were happening, and she started smoking outside and, you know, very, very much so compliant with whatever it was they told her. It's not like she started being spiteful or, you know, I've been very real about what happened with the situation. So for the first 2 weeks, it was like a nightmare because she was partying like a rock star every night and the cigarette smoke was coming through the AC vent. And then after my sister's husband talked to her, things got significantly better. And so I would say like another couple weeks passed, another 2 weeks, it was about a month of us in there without major issues. And then this one night I got home late and I wasn't able to lock the door, my main door. Like typically I would try to, before the sun went down, go over there into the kitchen, grab my stuff from the fridge. I didn't even cook in that kitchen because I was so shy and bassety. I would grab my stuff and I had purchased an electrical stove. So I used to be cooking up a storm in my room with this electrical stove. So anyway, I went over and I grabbed my stuff like I always do. I was making wraps back then. I was on the keto diet. I was on some sort of keto diet back then. So I was eating a lot of salmon and spinach wraps. Y'all, I'm back, y'all. Correction. I said I didn't want to smoke the secondhand smoke. Obviously, I wouldn't be smoking it. I meant to say inhale when I was talking about the smoke coming through the central AC unit. But anyways, y'all, I was doing a lot of kale wraps and salads and salmon and this and that and the third and organic grass-fed beef, that type of stuff. So anyways, I came in a little bit late this evening. I was working at the post office. I had gotten a new job at the post office. I'm telling y'all, I've had jobs like this. I've always been somebody that had a job, multiple jobs. So I'm telling you, it's so weird what's happening to me now. And I'm talking long periods of time at these jobs. That whole duration, the whole 2-year duration that I was up there in Florida, I was doing security and I was substitute teaching for Broward County Public Schools. And then toward the latter stint, I want to say like the last half a year of me being up there in Florida, I had gotten a job with the post office and I was a mail carrier. And that job is very hard. You see these people on the side of the streets with the little mail car and you see them dropping off mail and you think it's an easy, simple job. You don't know until you do it how difficult that job is. I don't want to go off on a tangent. I think obviously once you get into the groove of things and you learn the routes and whatever, eventually you get acclimated to the job. But out of every job I've ever worked, I have been saying this and I even said this in my earlier videos, that is the hardest job I have ever had in my life. And I'm talking about physically and even mental exertion. I created elaborate lesson plans for students, teaching them how to write MLA format papers. And I would say being a mail carrier was more difficult than doing that. For me, at least. Maybe just the way my mind works, creating lesson plans, and I like doing that type of stuff. But having to organize all this freaking mail and learn all the freaking routes that I have to drop the mail off to while trotting around in the hot sun in the hot van. I keep saying I have respect for mail carriers after having done it myself. I didn't know how hard the freaking job was going to be. It was very hard, and apparently they have a high turnover rate in Florida. It's not like down here where it's a small community. I'm talking big, huge van full of mail. And all these routes that I had to hit. It was very difficult. Anyway, so you have to know I was exhausted. I was doing that. I was still doing the security. And I was still subbing. And I was still taking on a full load of classes. I'm talking 5-6 classes in one semester because I wanted to hurry up and graduate. So this is why I probably seemed like a bat that was sensitive to whatever was going on in the house, because she was just partying every freaking night and I was already exhausted and overworked and stressed out. So anyways, no, she was ridiculous though, because now they're doing noise campaign in the background about it. Yeah, that was my circumstance at the time, so I did need quiet, but she was also ridiculous. Even that first night, my sister even looked at me like, damn, what is she doing out there? And this was every night she was partying like that. It wasn't like, okay, I'm just on the weekends, I'm a wild out. Like every night this lady was partying, I couldn't believe. Anyway, so like I said, back to where I was in the story though, y'all. So I came home late this evening from mail carrying. And I was exhausted and I came in and I washed up and I went over and I got the food. And typically when I cross back over from the kitchen area through my door and into my room, I locked the door one time. I remember my mom and my sister both warning me like, you don't know her like that. She seems cool, but you don't know her like that. Make sure you lock your door. And that's how we always have been down here growing up and stuff. The way we were raised, it's like, always make sure your door is locked and this and that. Just very particular and like, I don't want to say paranoid, but cautious. I grew up on a small island and I grew up watching Law and Order and First 48 and Snapped and A&E and all these creepy law shows with my mom. My mom likes to watch those type of forensic criminal file type shows. That's why I'm into that shit. And so I was paranoid. I would like to make sure my door was locked. So I remember I went through and this evening, I came out a little bit later than typical, but the sun was still up. But I was tired and I came to the door and I didn't lock it as I was closing it. I used to purposely make sure I locked it as I was closing it so I wouldn't offend her. Like I didn't want to go after the fact and get up and lock the door and her hear me lock it and feel offended. I don't know, this stupid. In retrospect, I keep saying this when I think back on it. I just wish I had just got up and locked. It's not a big deal. You don't know me and I don't know you, so me locking my door is normal. I don't know why I had this like mental block. I think it was just paranoia about what happened in the initial Airbnb with the elderly couple, where I'm sensitive to making noises with my door now. I didn't even want her to hear me locking the door. So anyway, I came back through my stuff and I made up my wrap and whatever else I did. And I laid on the bed and I have this OCD where I have to look at the doors and make sure both doors are locked. The door to the outside, the private entrance to my Airbnb, I make sure that's locked. And then I would make sure the connecting door to the kitchen is locked. I would check mentally with my eyes. But I always made a mental note to lock it when I was coming back in anyway, so I didn't have to get up and you hear me locking it. So anyway, I look up and I realize I didn't lock the door. I'm like, shit. But she was sitting right there on the couch. I heard her on the couch. So I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to go and lock the, mess with the door and her hear me locking it. I don't know. It's so stupid and weird. I mean, if I weren't such a shy, awkward person, I, at that time, could have even went into the kitchen. We were both sharing the kitchen. So why am I feeling so like awkward about getting up and locking the door, man? When I think about it, it was just so stupid. Anyway, so I got up and I tried to lock the door quietly. I remember trying to turn the lock very quietly. And then I remembered her like turning up something on her phone. Like she was sitting right there on the couch. I saw her in there in the kitchen. She was sitting there on the couch watching TV or whatever. And so I tried to lock the door quietly and I heard her like start turning something up on her phone. Now, mind you, we had close neighbors in this neighborhood too. It was similar again to, this is how it is in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. What you'll find is a lot of neighborhoods that's similar to the neighborhood I live in here on this island, where the houses are super close together. So it's not like the neighbors were eons away or whatever. Like you had a neighbor right there and they used to be in the yard all the time grilling and doing stuff. So anyways, I tried to lock the door quietly and I heard her turn something up on her phone and I remember getting sensitive to her doing that. That was my fault. Every time I tell this story, taking accountability to what started here in this unit with this lady. You know, it's not like with the elderly couple where it was just an OCD and you took it the wrong way and it's like, oh my God, now I'm being freaking monitored and tortured with noise campaigns. In this situation, I think I mistook, just because of my prior experience, her turning up the phone when I tried to lock the door quietly. I think I was just sensitive to noises at that point anyway. And I think I probably mistook what she did. You know, or either she did really turn it up because she heard me doing thing with the door. I don't know. Trying to lock the door quietly. I don't know. But I remember after that, I did a little noise back. Like I made a noise back in response to her turning the phone up. Like I remember, I think I slammed something down or something like that. And it started this thing with she and I. Like I just noticed like that night, it just seemed like like that whole night until I fell asleep, it felt like we were both doing noises back and forth at each other after the turn up the phone thing. It was weird. We had been in the unit for like a whole month with no issue, aside from those first 2 weeks where I had to like kind of rat on her for turning stuff up. But it was like after that, it's just like it started this weird thing. It's so stupid how it started and weird, but it's just literally, I kid you not, this is what really happened. After that day was like we started both doing noise campaigns on each other. It literally turned into what was happening in the apartment with the elderly couple, except this time I'm doing noises back now. And this time I feel like I kind of started it in a way, from sensitivity to her turning up her phone at me trying to lock the door quietly. So it just like turned into this thing where we both started doing noise campaigns, even during the big daytime. Anytime I'm home, she's turning up stuff. Every time I'm moving in the unit, and I was doing the same thing. Every time she was in the kitchen, I was making noises, and it just turned into this weird, stupid thing, man. And then these two guys moved in. I don't know where they came from or when they moved in. You know, my sister didn't warn me and say, hey, 2 new residents are moving into the unit. She didn't tell me anything. So I remember one evening she was just like, the noise campaigns amped up. I know, so it was like her doing the noise campaigns on me, but it seemed like it amped up. I was like, no, man, she has to have company or something, because it seems like multiple people are doing it, is what I realized. And so it wasn't until like, you know, a couple days of it seeming like someone was over there. Remember, I told you I barely went over there. And when the thing started with she and I didn't even go over there to get stuff. I started getting things that didn't need to be refrigerated. Like, that's how much I don't like drama and I try to avoid conflict. When the weird thing started, I started drinking room temperature water. I stopped purchasing things that needed to be refrigerated, and I started purchasing things that I could eat that didn't have to be refrigerated until I was able to get like a mini fridge in the room. My sister purchased a mini fridge for the room. Like, that's how bad it got or awkward it got. I didn't even want to cross over to go into the kitchen with what was happening. So anyway, after the thing started with these guys where they moved in and I didn't see them because of the way that I moved, like I left around the back. I barely ever saw the girl. Like I barely ever saw the woman, much less for these men. I didn't even know they had moved in. I just noticed one day the noise campaigns like amped up and it sounded like it was multiple people. So it's like, wait a minute, what the heck is going on? I remember just, you know, eventually calling my sister and saying, hey, is someone else, you know, over here? And she said, oh yeah, 2 new guys moved in, blah, blah, blah. So I think the girl probably told them whatever she told them. And they started participating, you know, and I never even met them. I didn't even see their face. I didn't see their face until way after the fact. Met one of them. I actually ended up giving one of them a ride in my car once, and it was very awkward. After you had been doing noise campaigns on me, and you don't know how I look, I don't know how you look. And then now we find, you know, you asked me for a ride. It was just a weird situation in that damn Airbnb. The whole last 6 months of me, half a year, I would say, of me being in Florida, from the Cuban guy's Airbnb to my sister's Airbnb was like weird stuff. And then I came home like traumatized from the different noise campaigns that took place. Anyway, so it just turned into this really horrible living situation where all three of them were doing noise campaigns on me like crazy. And it turned into this thing where there was this sink in the kitchen. And remember I told you there was a connecting door from my room to the kitchen. And so it seems like they started doing this spiteful thing where they would stand by the sink, one of them, all night long. And if I would even wake up, you make up in the middle of the night and you turn on your side or something. If I would even wake up and turn on my side or anything, they start turning on the faucet and turning on the faucet. And so that became like this main noise campaign. I remember even telling my sister about it. And similar to what's happening now in the targeting where I'm kind of getting gaslit about stuff, that's kind of how she was moving. That was the introduction of that kind of gaslighting. It was, well, no, actually, the introduction of that kind of gaslighting from my family, I don't even want to bring this person up, was with the cyberstalking, cyberbullying dude, to be honest with you, before I ever became a target, where I was showing them certain things were happening and they were acting like it was a coincidence or, I don't know, that was my first experience of actually feeling like they were gaslighting me, actually, was with that guy and stuff, some of the stuff that was taking place. But it still wasn't hardcore. We were still close and it wasn't like what things ended up turning into. So things really started getting weird, I would say, when I stayed in my sister's Airbnb. That was the start of things really getting weird with the family. And then I moved home and I got in that big fight with my mom. And then I sent the text. I started feeling like they were doing noise campaigns on me. And then that was it. Like, I became a target after that. So anyway, it just turned into this thing where all three of them were doing noise campaigns on me and they were staying by the sink all night long. And I remember one morning I woke up, it was like the sun was just about to come up. I think it was like maybe 6:30-ish, something like that. The sun was about to come up. And I have sinuses. I've talked about this already, that I have a sinus problem and my nose is stuffy. And I don't really snore like that to my knowledge, but sometimes it does affect my sleeping. Not often, but sometimes there are moments. So I remember I was really congested this morning. It was kind of cold. Excuse me, sorry. And I woke up, I was having some sort of dream I was having. And I woke up snorting, like they were making this snorting sound and my nose was, I realized, congested. And so I was trying to catch my breath. And I remember while I'm doing this, I started hearing by the door, one of the people that was staying there by the sink, they started going, copying me and making the noise. By the door, they were going, so I remember calling my sister and crying about it. Like, I actually called her and I was crying. I don't even really cry often like that, but I was overstressed anyway. I was working all these different jobs and whatever else was going on. And then I'm dealing with this intense noise campaign. It was to the point where at a certain point, I started staying in my vehicle. I was paying for the Airbnb, but I was only going there to shower and sometimes rest my head during the daytime. It got so bad, eventually I was staying in my vehicle. Many nights I stayed in my vehicle. So anyway, I remember this was one of the nights when I was staying there in the unit, though, and they did that. One of the people was going, so I remember calling my sister and crying about it. And she was telling me, oh my God, I'm sure you're not hearing that. I'm sure they're not by the door at this hour. Come on, like totally gaslighting me and acting like what I'm saying isn't true. I even remember this young guy came to stay there too. This young guy that was in the military. He came for a short stint. And what they started doing was his mattress was near the router, the internet router. And they would purposely, because I started to play my computer super loud to block out the noises whenever I was there, they would purposely start plugging out the internet router and forcing me to have to come over into the unit with them to plug it back in. And I would be hearing laughing coming from the room and stuff. Like, it was just really weird, stupid, immature, petty for grown-ass people stuff that started happening. And all of these people were older than me with the exception of that military dude that came. He was only there for about a week. And of course, he got involved. He didn't know what was going on. He just listened to whatever they told him. He didn't get to know me or my side of the story. He just listened to whatever they told him and started to participate. Anyway, so he was young. He was like in his early 20s. I think he was like 19, actually. He was very young. The female was in her early 40s. And the two dudes that came were in their late 30s. And I was in my late 20s. So anyway, it just turned into this stupid ass thing, man, where they're doing like petty, childish, elementary school type stuff, like plugging out the internet so I couldn't blast my thing to kind of block out the noise campaigns they were doing, plugging out the internet, and forcing me to have to come over and plug the router back in. And I'll be like, what? And I'm like, oh, sorry, I plugged out again. Like, just weird, stupid, petty stuff. And so it just turned into like this nightmare I couldn't escape from. I was like, oh my God, how did this, out of nowhere, my whole time up here, everything was good. I've never dealt with anything like this in my life. I stayed in multiple Airbnbs and didn't have a problem. Then I stayed with this Cuban guy. I decided I'm gonna stay with him long term. The thing with the elderly couple happens. And it's like now all of a sudden it's just this weird thing where every Airbnb I'm going in all of a sudden now it's the same scenario. It was just weird. It felt spiritual. I'm telling you, it was weird to me. So anyway, I moved back home now. Eventually, like I said, they got the teaching offer and I decided to move home because I didn't like the specifics or whatever the provision was. And even if I took the job, I would have eventually became a teacher. I would have got my certification. It would have been more like a paid internship is what it would have been like. But it was more so just me being picky and particular at the time because I hadn't been targeted and I didn't know what it felt like to have to grapple for employment. I didn't know that feeling. It was easy. I got jobs like nothing back then. So anyway, fast forward now. So y'all know I moved home. I kind of started telling y'all what happened after I moved home. I graduated, got my degree, moved home, applied to become a teacher down here. I did get through, that went relatively well. I got through, was staying in the house for the summer. It was in the old neighborhood, not this neighborhood, with my family. And that was when I sent the text message. The big fight happened. It didn't happen immediately. I was down here for about a month before I said anything, before I felt like they were doing stuff in the hallway. It was literally after that big fight happened and I said certain things out of anger that I started feeling like I was hearing stuff in the hallways at night. It was literally after the fight. It just started feeling like I was hearing, I don't know, it just felt like noise campaigns by my door, similar to what they knew I had been going through in the Airbnbs. I told them, they knew the whole saga. In every Airbnb where the thing happened, I told them what was happening. The first 2 Airbnbs, they were laughing about it like it was a joke. The third Airbnb for my sister, that was where it got more like kind of weird. And then I come home and I move home now and then this big fight happens and then now I'm starting to feel like I'm hearing stuff outside my door. So anyway, so that's what happened though, y'all. I sent the text and then I became a target. And it's just been up since then. Like noise campaigns like crazy. For the first 2 years, from 2020 to 2022, I was dealing with noise campaigns, eventually Rev campaign. I didn't learn I was a target until 2022 though. 2 years after the targeting started, when I tried to relocate off island and I realized the thing followed me. It was some sort of weird thing that was attached to me that would follow me around. Evil bastard with the hammer. There's some evil thing in one of the houses, y'all. One of the evil ass entities that's attached to me with the targeting that hammers nonstop for bad, horrible, wicked things all day long. And these are one of the entities that I'll have these nasty reactions to and I'll say horrible stuff about because they're tormenting me 24/7. And then I'll start getting threats with the technology about not getting my job. Like, this is how it works. It's horrible. There was a day where they were doing so much noise campaigns in this neighborhood. I said, let me see something. Let me see if I don't react. And I say my prayers, what's going to happen. I had to pray to make these things stop doing what they were doing. It's spiritual. It's like some sort of demonic attack. Anyway, so nonetheless, y'all, it's a weird thing. I've heard a lot of other targets say that too about the program. It's very weird because wrath is one of the deadly sins. If you do believe in the Bible, there are 7 deadly sins and wrath is one of them. So if it's some sort of program or organization that's trying to invoke wrath out of you, or you have a person that's trying to invoke wrath, that can't be of God. If they're trying to invoke wrath and anger out of you, that can't be of God. Anyway, so nonetheless, y'all, let the plane go by about its business so I could finish what I'm saying. I don't see how this could be a form of rehab, even if you do feel like somebody's having some sort of mental break or you feel like they need to learn a lesson. It's like you're fighting fire with fire. How is this rehabilitation? How is torturing somebody sadistically and humiliating them and trying to get them angry and getting pleasure from whatever it is that you're doing to them? How is that gonna heal them or make them better or quote unquote change? Anyway, so nonetheless, I've seen some targets have declined. That's what I've seen. I've seen some that realize they have to get strong and figure out whatever tactic to get out of the thing and fight it, and they turn into lawyers, their own personal lawyers. And then I've seen other targets that deteriorate. So you're going to be one or the other. You're either going to be one that rises above it and figures out how to fight it, or you're going to be one that deteriorates. There's no in between. Anyway, so Nonetheless, y'all, that's what it was. So I came home, I sent the text, I became a target, and it was 2 years. It was 2 years of noise campaigns here on island while I was teaching, by the way. I was teaching virtually. And that was when I had created this horrible, tumultuous relationship with one of the older people in my close circle, to the point where now I feel like that's why he feels some sort of resentment towards me. Similar to a lot of the gang stalkers, where these nonstop abuse tactics 24/7 on top of the person. So they have these horrible, nasty reactions and they think or say horrible things. And then you villainize them for reactive abuse, reacting to whatever abuse it was that you were doing. I don't understand. Anyway, so that's what was happening for 2 years. I was here teaching virtually and, just dealing with noise campaigns and dealing with targeting. And I didn't know that's what it was. And then in 2022, tried to relocate. It attached itself to me, followed me, blew up in the mainland. That was when the targeting went viral and a lot of people got involved. It went beyond the scope of my little island where I was born and raised. And people in the mainland got involved. Like, I think in all 50 states, this thing is viral. I think this thing has gone beyond the U.S. and the Western Hemisphere. I think it's over in the Middle East. I think it's in Europe. I think it's in Africa. I kid you not, y'all. I have a very unique targeting, and I think it's viral from the things they've hinted to me and from what I experienced when I tried to relocate off island. A very unique and strange targeting. You cannot tell me this thing is not something weird is going on, bro. It's weird. Anyway, so nonetheless, and that's an inside joke, y'all. If you kept up with what's been going on for the last few months, you'll know where that it's weird thing came from. But anyway, it is truly weird, though. Anyway, so that's what's going on, y'all. I've been tortured for 6 years because I sent a text. Something started out of pure innocence, an OCD I've had since childhood that my family used to laugh at, that created some sort of weird situation in my first long-term Airbnb. And it trickled into the latter 2 Airbnbs that I stayed in. Then I moved home, got in a stupid petty fight with my family, and started feeling like that situation had started up in our house. I sent an innocent text inquiring about what I thought I was hearing, and I've been targeted and tortured for 6 years because of it. So let's fast forward to what took place today. I actually wanted to talk about that man at the end of the street, but I've already talked about what happened with him multiple times. But every time they start up with me and start the noise campaigns, I feel like I want to talk because they're dead wrong. As usual, most people that attach themselves to my targeting and feel like they're offended by something that I did in response to what they were doing. But I'm not going to waste my energy talking about that man. I'm just not going to waste my time. The video's already super long. This is what he wanted and they wanted anyway, distraction from what I'm saying. So I've talked about him in prior videos. It's irrelevant. Anyway, so back to what I was saying, y'all. So the targeting ended up blowing up because when I went to the mainland, I realized it followed me. I had some stupid reactions. I shared offensive Hebrew Israelite propaganda in my car in Florida for about a month. In addition to other offensive reactions that I had, I didn't physically harm anybody. But I still had these horrible reactions where I shared offensive stuff about Christians, white people. There was one day where I got offended because I was doing DoorDash. And there was some gang stalking taking place in the Chinese restaurant. And so one day I went and I purposely looked up offensive stuff about Chinese people. And one day I shared offensive stuff about Chinese people. I actually admire that culture. They know I do too because they know I'm into holistic health. And I keep out of my mouth talking about the centurions, how in Okinawa, Japan, how they have the most centurions. They have the longest lifespan in the world. In Okinawa, Japan. They have the most centurions. So the most people that are living in their 100s are in Okinawa, Japan. Then it's due to lifestyle, diet, etc. So they're living the life that I aspire to live and that I'm trying to live, where they're intermittent fasting, exercise, drinking green tea, etc. I admire the culture. I always have. And I know there are different Asian cultures. Japan is just one. But I'm just saying I don't have an issue with different cultures that was reactive abuse. I had, like I said, a tumultuous relationship with someone in my close circle, an older person in my close circle, when the targeting first kicked off before I knew I was a target. After I sent the text and all these noise campaigns and weird stuff started to really take place. And I was teaching virtually, and all day long he was home back then. He was out of a job back then. He's a welder, and The main refinery on island had closed down years prior. He had even relocated to the States for a few years to weld. Anyway, he came back on island and he was out of work for a couple of years, and it had caused some sort of like friction between him and the other older person in my close circle. And so I knew that. And so to be mean, I used to say mean stuff about him being home all day while I was teaching virtually because he was doing noise campaigns on me all day. It was so bad. And so I used to be angry and just say mean stuff. And so I think, oh, now that's why he'd have this thing against me, low-key. Like, you have this thing with me, like this person in my close circle. They keep trying to paint these false narratives with the technology. Like, that's always been my life. And I have these... Just put it together, y'all. The two older people in my close circle, you could put together the relationship of who you think I'm talking about. They keep trying to make it seem like that's always been, the case. And I grew up with this disdain with these people in my older people in my close circle that raised me. And that I was always trying to get their approval. And, it was always this bad relation. No, that's not true. And I've said that from the very first video that I've created. I had a very good childhood. That's largely why I thought what was happening was witchcraft. Because it was like this major shift. And I was seeing parts or sides to these people that I had never seen before. I knew them my whole life. And I had a relatively good life growing up. A lot of the people that befriended my siblings and I told us how lucky we were. So for it to shift the way that it did, it was not always like that. And that person in particular didn't really start having this disdain towards me and doing mean, spiteful, like abusive tactics until the targeting started. And the more he did stuff, the more mean stuff I would think or say back then. Not think, because they weren't reading, to my knowledge, my thoughts back then. This was before I tried to relocate off island. But the more mean stuff I would say, and then just the more resentment I think was felt. And then he has a lot of friends on island. They're all getting involved. Like, it's multiple people that have a lot of connections on island that I tiffed off. People that were related to me, people that were not. And that's where I'm in this spot where I cannot get away out of the thing. Like, they will not relinquish the hold on me and just let me go out of this thing, man, and let me live a normal life. It's been 6 years. There are people that have committed hardcore crimes. I'm not judging them again. I have to reiterate, because they like to manipulate with the things I say. But I'm saying there are people who have committed hardcore crimes. I've seen it. That have spent less time in prison than I have been targeted. It's not right. I understand you don't like the bitch or whatever your warped perception is, but this is not right. Right is right and wrong is wrong. It's not right. Anyway, so anyways, this what happened, y'all. So I got back on island, and that was when I learned I was a target. I did research. I got back in 2022 after the thing blew up, attached itself to me and followed me. I got back on island. I said, wait a minute. No, man, I have to do research. And I did research in 2022, the end of 2022. And I just typed in people being stalked by groups of people. And that was where the term gang stalking popped up. And then that was where I started learning about the term targeted individual. And I realized this was an actual thing. And that I was in an actual program that attached itself to me and I hadn't even committed a crime. And only then did I start making videos. Because the videos, they gaslight the hell out of me about them. They paint it like I'm like Wendy Williams and I'm like Dr. Heavenly from Married to Medicine, if you're familiar with that show. Like one of these drama queen type people that's sitting there spreading rumors and talking about people for the fuck of it. Excuse my language. It's such gaslighting. I'm such a quiet person. Anybody that really knows me from the past knows that it's like squeezing water out of a rock to get stuff out of me. My sisters even used to say that. They're telling me all the business. And when I'm ready, I tell them stuff because I'm such a private person. That's just my personality. That's just my nature. I don't run around running my mouth. You don't have a history. I'm in my at this point now, they took so much of my life. I'm in my early 30s. I just made 34. But when the thing started, I was in my late 20s. You never had a history of me saying stuff. You never knew who I was dating. I was in so many relationships. I never posted it to social media because I'm such a private person. Nobody knew who I was dating. Now I'm targeted, I'm running my mouth, I'm doing this video, that video in response to what's happening to me. I actually tried to relocate. Let me remind you, in 2022 when the thing attached itself to me. And so I came back on island, I tried to relinquish my life. And still no, it was just still like nonstop torture, but this is the safest environment for me because this is my home and at least I know people here. And they're not as vicious here, even though they have been quite vicious. It's nowhere near as vicious as what I dealt with in the States. In Florida, I almost lost my life. It's to the point where since I coming back in 2022, I have not been back to the States. I'm so traumatized. There have been several events that I missed. My grandpa's funeral. Several events that I refuse to leave this island until I'm out of the targeting. I'm not stepping foot off of this island until I'm out of the targeting. Not doing it. I almost lost my life in Florida. It was that bad. They're very vicious in the States with the targeting. So anyways, I forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah, y'all. So I'm back now and I'm just dealing with a bunch of torture and unfair treatment. And they keep hinting like they're gonna let me out the targeting and then it's not happening. And then I realize another year passed and I'm getting older. And then they're teasing me about the fact that I'm getting older. And they know that's something that's bothering me too. That you're taking like my precious years. My biological time clock is ticking. I'm not a man. I'm a female. Like these are all things that bother me. So anyways, nonetheless, let me talk about what happened today, y'all, because it sounds like a rant I went on, but I did it for a reason. It's just unfair. I just feel like it's so much unfair treatment. If you have kept up with the videos that I've posted over the course of the last few months, over the course of the last 3 years since I started making the videos, the last 4 years at this point, you'll hear all the unfair treatment. Obviously, this is what happens with targets, but specifically the last few months have been real bad, y'all. If y'all been keeping up with my videos, you know what I'm talking about. You could start at this video here. Part 1, the sabotaging and gaslighting of the targeted individual. 3 months ago, that was where things really, like it was an amp up, I would say, in the targeting. But things started getting real gnarly for me. And a bunch of unfair treatment. Extremely unfair stuff. Anyway, so let me talk about what happened today now that led to what I'm talking about now. Oh boy, one of the tate neighbors. He hasn't done anything yet, but he be doing all kinds of annoying stuff. So just now off rip, whenever I see him, I'm just annoyed, even if he's not doing anything in the moment. Anyway, so let me talk about what happened today, y'all, that led to me making this video in the first place and retelling the story that I've told a million times. I shouldn't have to tell it again and again and again and again to try to get justice. So I went out today in the kitchen, y'all. I went to do my regular routine. I have this routine. I changed my diet. I told y'all I got the injury. If you've been keeping up with my videos, the last few videos, you'll hear about that week where I got the injury and I still don't know what's going on. I have a doctor's appointment coming up where they're going to do a scan and, you know, different things like that to, you know, help me figure out or diagnose whatever it was that took place. There was some sort of activity that took place one of the weeks I was working out, some intense stuff. I did a deadlift. I talked about this in prior videos where there was gang stalking going on and I got distracted. And the barbell was loaded improperly, and I did a 315-pound deadlift where 4 of the plates were on the left side and 2 of the plates were on the right side due to distraction. So that put a strain on my bladder, right? Or my I would say pelvic area, my pelvic floor. There was a lot of intra-abdominal pressure, and the form was improper. The next day, I had my ab workout. That's typically when I do my ab workouts. I stopped doing that now since the injury. I was going to the gym to do my ab workouts. I had machines I would use to do the ab workouts. I felt like it wasn't hitting my abs hard enough. By the way, side note, y'all, when it comes to your abdomen and your abs and stuff, that's more so based on body fat percentage. So even if you work out your abs, you can't spot reduce and you can't basically choose where the fat is going to go on your body. You just have to have a low enough body fat percentage for your abs to be visible. That's just one of those muscle groups. You know, like your arms and your legs, you can have like a high body fat percentage and still see some sort of development or bulk there. But specifically with your abdomen, typically if your body fat percentage isn't low enough, you can have the abs there. I have abs right now, I guarantee you. You're not going to see them. So even if you're doing all kinds of crunches and this and that, you will develop the abs. Of course, they'll get more developed, but you're not really going to see it unless your body fat percentage is low enough, and I know that. But still, I was doing ab workouts, and I was working on getting my diet together to where I was getting enough protein in and, you know, balancing out the fat and calories, etc. I finally got it together now, y'all. It took me a minute. I finally got it. It took me getting injured to do all the things I already had planned to do. Because I had the whole spreadsheet. I like to write lists for the things I'm planning to do, whether it's working out, work, school, whatever. I write lists to stay organized. I had this whole plan for myself of how I was going to change my diet and become pescatarian and do this, that, and the third, and make healthy juices and intermittent fasting, etc. And I kept procrastinating, and it took me getting injured to actually start doing and implementing the things I already had planned for myself. Anyway, so back then I was still working my abs out, and I wasn't scared about intra-abdominal pressure because I didn't know about pelvic organ prolapse, or I knew about hernias, but I didn't feel like I was at risk. For some reason, I just never thought about it, and I just wasn't concerned. So anyway, this day I decided, instead of going to the gym and doing my ab workouts like I normally do, I said, let me try it at the house and see if that feels better, because I feel like I'm not like hitting my abs hard enough, and it's not feeling enough of a burn when I'm going to the gym. So I remember after doing that improper deadlift and straining myself, the next day, of all weeks for me to choose to do this shit, I decided to stay home and do crunches at the house. And I did them to failure. And you know what muscle failure means, y'all. You literally do until you physically cannot do another rep. Your body will not allow you to do another rep. And oftentimes muscle failure isn't what you think. Anyway, it's hard to reach true muscle failure. What's typically happening is your nervous system, your central nervous system, is going to failure before your muscles do. That's typically what's happening. You can reach muscle failure. It's possible. Of course it is. Or at least very close to. But oftentimes, especially with certain workouts that are compound movements, like a crunch, where it's like your whole body working, typically your nervous system is going to burn out before your muscles do. Whatever it was that burnt out. I did the crunches until I physically could not do another rep. And I was feeling this pressure, this weird pressure in my pelvis and my lower area. And I knew something wasn't right, but I was just like, nah, that's just how, I'm like, it's just how it's supposed to feel. I was like, just push through the pain. I'm thinking it's just like similar to when you're working out and you feel the burn in your muscle because the muscle's tearing. I thought that's what it was. I didn't know it was my pelvic floor tearing. I didn't know what was happening. So I kept doing it and feeling this weird pressure down there. And then eventually I just could not do another rep. And then the next day I was sore. I couldn't even lie in my stomach. I was feeling this like pain, slight pressure, not major pressure, not like what it turned into. More so just this extreme soreness. And I was like, ooh, I haven't felt sore in my abs like this in a long time. I was like, I'm going to do it like this from now on. I'm going to do that workout from now on, is what I was thinking. So then the day after that, I went and I did my sprints. And typically I sprint up the hill in my neighborhood, but it was raining a little bit that day. So I decided to go to the local university here on island. And I went to the field to run on the field. And when you sprint on flat ground instead of uphill, although I know that sounds weird, but sprinting on flat ground is actually more taxing on the body than sprinting uphill. It's something to do with, physics and the way that the body is positioned when you're running uphill, because it gives you better form. If you learn about sprinting and the form you're supposed to take, running uphill actually gives you better form, and it puts less pressure on the body and on the pelvic floor. Every step that you take, it's lighter than when you're running on a flat ground. So anyway, I went on the flat ground, and I was running like a track star. I was running as hard as I could possibly run. I remember they were doing noise campaigns too that day, and I'll get the stuff on the road. I was running like a track star. And afterwards, I really started to feel the soreness in my lower area, and I still just thought it was soreness from doing those crunches. So then I woke up the next morning and I went to bathe, and I noticed I was feeling this weird pressure. So I looked down. Obviously, you look at yourself when you're bathing and stuff. And I noticed my private parts were bulging. Like there was this big, huge bulge in my private parts. It was really scary. I had never seen anything like that in my life. It was this big, huge bulge in my private parts. And so I said, oh my God, I flew out the shower and I ran into my mom's room. And I said, oh my God, I think I have a hernia or whatever. I thought it was a hernia, and I was feeling this weird pressure too. It was no longer just like extremely sore like before. It actually felt like a pressure. But it's not like I've heard some woman describe they get pelvic organ prolapse where they know the moment it happens, like they were straining to do something or whatever it was, and then they noticed the thing happen. With me, it didn't feel when it happened. I mean, there were signs of the soreness and, whatever, but it's just I woke up and the pressure and the bulge was there. It was so weird. Anyway, so I ran in my mom's room and I was freaking out, and I remember them telling me, oh, it's a hernia. My dad, kind of giving me bad news, like, I can't work out anymore. This is it. Like just end of the line type thing. I'm like, what? He told me he used to lift heavy too, and he had a hernia back in his day. He got 2 hernias, and he got surgery for one, and then the second one, his friend told him about this herbal tea he could make that helped, so he didn't have to get surgery for it. But he doesn't lift heavy anymore, and that's it. I'm like, no, it's not it. I'm like, I'm definitely not going to stop working out. I mean, this is a big world full of people. I'm sure somebody's gone through what I've gone through before and continue to work out. We have all kind of medical professions out there and research and stuff like that. I'm sure at this point now, whatever I'm going through has happened already and can be rectified. So I'm just like, let me figure out what's going on. So I remember, just kind of doing research, but I knew I was going to go to the doctor. I was asking my mom to go to the doctor with me. Of course, as a target, nervous, because you have all these people that have something against me. And then specifically here on the island, y'all know about the cyberstalking, cyberbullying dude. He's a nurse in the hospital, the main hospital here, the only hospital we have on the island. So it really was rough. I'm in a real fucked up position. So anyways, and I don't have my personal doctor anymore. I used to have a personal doctor down here that I trusted. I'm still trying to get back with her now. I've been gone off island. I was gone for a few months. Remember when I tried to relocate, and then when I came back on island, I was no longer teaching. I didn't have my insurance anymore. I didn't feel comfortable going to anyone really because of the targeting and just being traumatized. I've been in the house. I haven't even gone to the dentist in years. I typically like to go get my teeth cleaned once a year. I haven't done that anything. And I typically like to go to the OBGYN once a year and get a physical. That's just the kind of person I am. I have not been. It's been 4 years since I've been to the doctor. So it literally took an injury for me to even go to the doctor. So anyways, I was mortified. I was like, oh my God, now I have to go to the hospital and they don't care for me in there and I'm going to have this major injury. I was just freaking out. I was like, and a hernia is not one of those things where you could just pop pills, pop vitamins and drink healthy juices and fast and completely heal yourself. All these other illnesses, parasites, cancer, diseases, autoimmune diseases, even STDs like herpes, you can heal if you know what you're doing. You can fast, you can do healthy juices, you can completely change your diet up and you can heal your body. But a hernia is different. That's literally like a hole in your lining where intestines or some sort of internal something is popping through. So that typically requires surgery. That's not something that you can typically heal naturally. So I remembered being freaked out about it and just concerned, and stressed out about the thing. Not knowing what was going on and knowing I had to go to the doctor. So anyways, I was doing research though. Before I got to the doctor, I was doing research and I, saw several different things. I saw pelvic organ prolapse and I saw hernia. And from the research I was doing, it was actually looking more like it was a pelvic organ prolapse. The only thing that wasn't matching up was that I didn't have anything coming out of my canal. I know this is a TMI, y'all, but this is literally what happens. I've talked about this in prior videos. With pelvic organ prolapse, one of your internal organs in your pelvis has dropped down and it might start coming out of your vaginal opening or your rectum. It depends on what's dropped. If you have rectal prolapse, your rectum is coming out of your behind, out of your butthole. I know this sounds like a TMI. It's horrifying. If it's cystocellular bladder prolapse, then your bladder might start dropping down through your private part. And if it's uterine prolapse, then your uterus is starting to come through and poke through, come out of your private parts, right? So that wasn't happening. I wasn't having anything coming out of me. I tested myself. I looked in the mirror and I did the cough test and all this. I wasn't seeing anything. But I was having this bulge in my private part, but it didn't match up with hernias either. So what I saw of hernias, you got the inguinal, which is in your groin. You have the femoral, which is also in your groin, but it's lower in your groin. You have the umbilical, which is by your belly button. And then there's another one that's higher up by your gastric area. And that's a very rare one. That typically happens during birth. But it didn't match up with any of the hernias that I was seeing, the location of the bulge. It was directly over my private part. It wasn't in the groin area, and it was a huge bulge too. So I was like, is that my bladder? I was like, and every time I'm typing in bulge in the private part, pelvic organ prolapse is popping up, but they're talking about a bulge coming out of the vagina, not coming through the front pubic bone. So I was like, what is this? I was trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And it was like I couldn't sit for long periods of time either because I was feeling tenderness. And I remember this was when I was still at the call center doing security, and I sat there the whole shift holding peeing. And I got up once all the girls had left from the center. I got up to go use the bathroom, and I peed, and I looked in the mirror. My whole pelvis was swollen. The bulge was in the private part, and my whole pelvis was swollen, like lymphatic fluid, like it was some sort of serious major injury or strain or whatever. And it was some sort of lymphatic fluid. but the big bulge in my private part still doesn't sit right with me. I'm like, that couldn't have just been fluid. I was like, what was that? So anyway, went to the ER. I told you all about this. I'm not trying to tell the whole story again. The doctor kind of did a quick look, and she told me, that my obliques, I also, that's the other thing. My oblique area looks swollen. Both of my oblique areas look swollen. So the doctor was telling me that's normal. That's just my obliques. They're just really defined. That's probably from working out. I said, okay, but what about, my private area? There's a bulge there. She told me, well, stand up. She told me to lay down, and she felt it. She's telling me, well, sit up. So while I'm sitting up, she's feeling the area, and she's telling me it feels normal. She's not feeling anything. And so she said, I don't think anything's wrong. So I stood up. I said, please look at it while I'm standing up. I said, there's definitely a bulge there. So when I stood up, she looked at it and saw the bulge, and she said, okay, well, I don't know what that would be, because typically a hernia wouldn't be there, is what she said. She said, typically a hernia wouldn't be in that location. And so she said, I'm going to just write hernia, and you can go see your private care physician, because the person that does the x-rays aren't here right now. So I was like, oh boy, I already started feeling nervous, like I'm not getting the help I need. And so I remembered, you're targeted, duh. They don't really care for me in that hospital either. First of all, I've shared the offensive Hebrew Israelite propaganda. This doctor was white, so obviously she knows about the stuff I shared. And then the cyber-stalking, cyberbullying guy works in that hospital. That's his people. So, I mean, it's a small island, and I'm targeted. So it's like a catch-22. I try to relocate, and I go to the States where it's a bigger environment. They're vicious. They're very vicious up there. It's vicious here too, but it's a whole different kind of vicious in the States. I've been targeted in the States, and I don't know anyone up there. And now I've shared offensive Hebrew Israelite propaganda. So I'm even in a hotter, in a more dangerous kind of vicarious situation. I stay here. It's a small community where everyone knows each other. And I've made enemies here and there and that. It's unfair shit as usual. They're very ignorant with the way that they view the thing. Like, they can see right from wrong in the situation. They can see the situations where I was completely right, but they're so biased and subjective. I keep saying this in every video. Like, they will blatantly know that I'm right in a situation, but it's just straight bias and subjectivity. And that's what I'm dealing with. Like, this literally, it's like, oh, well, bitch, you're right, but I don't give a fuck, and we're going to get together and do this. Like, that's literally the mentality. I kid you not. That's what I'm dealing with. So anyway, that's what I'm dealing with. I'm fucked. Excuse my language. So that's what's going on. And then I got angry with certain things I was dealing with, and I had these nasty reactions. That's what it's been for the last 4 years. Just horrible reactions. I've seen it in every targeting case. Every targeting case I've looked at, I've seen the person being villainized and having these nasty reactions to what's happening to them, and getting more villainized and more people hopping on the hate train. It's a satanic program. You're screwed. Like, you really get screwed over when whoever it is throws you in this thing. They set you up for failure when they throw you in this thing. Anyway, so nonetheless, that's what it is, though. So that's what the situation is. I went to the hospital, and I felt like I kind of got a quick brush over look, and I left still feeling scared. I'm just being honest. I left feeling scared, like I hadn't really gotten help. That's how I felt when I left. I'm just being honest. So I put on my brain, and I said, well, Sharifa, you're a survivor. You've been through all of this already, and you survived. What are you going to do? I know about natural health. I know about holistic healing. I've been looking into this stuff for years. Of course, a hernia is different, though. This is what's scary. A hernia is very different to, like, let's say a muscle strain or even organ prolapse. You can do therapy for organ prolapse. You can take supplements to build up the pelvic floor. But with a hernia, again, that's surgical. That's different. I started even looking into healing hernias naturally, and I found this one solo dolo man. I was talking about how he was attempting to heal his hernia naturally, and he was making some sort of progress. He did make some sort of progress. And he was doing similar to what you would do for the pelvic floor. When that drops, one of those organs drop, you take a lot of collagen peptides, because that builds up the tissue. And then you do different exercises to strengthen the area. Or in certain cases with organ prolapse, it could be that your area was too tight, like your pelvis was too tight, so you need to loosen up the area. But nonetheless, it's the same thing with a hernia, where you want to strengthen, so you do like stomach vacuums. He had an inguinal hernia, so he was doing a lot of stomach vacuums to strengthen the area and I guess try to shrink the hole. And then he was taking a lot of collagen peptides. He stopped doing dairy because dairy is inflammatory. Now you can get organic grass-fed dairy and it does have a lot of health benefits to it. But milk in general is an inflammatory thing, especially if you're drinking from a cow that's meant to feed a big, huge ass cow. If you are going to do milk, it's better to do goat milk. Goat milk is more similar to human breast milk. Anyway, so I just started to do what I could do. I don't know. I still don't know what's going on. I still don't have a clue. I don't know what the hell is going on. But I decided that I was going to try to do some sort of natural thing to heal myself as much as possible until I could see a private care physician. And in my head, I knew I wanted to get to my old doctor because she was a very good doctor. And despite all the offensive things I've said, I mean, she might feel things towards me too. A lot of people here on Island do. She's actually friends with my mom. Her son went to private school with my brother. So I don't know. She probably feels something towards me too. A lot of people on Island do, but at least I have a history with this person and she's a good doctor and I've worked with her before and I've had her do pap smears for me before and take blood. And so at least that comfort level is there where I've actually worked with her before. And so I wanted to get back with her and everybody raves about her on Island. She's a good doctor. So I wanted to get back with her and that was my mindset. And I said, until I could get over there, let me just try to heal myself naturally and do what I can to heal myself because I do know about holistic healing and natural health. And so I started to juice. I changed my whole diet up and I did what I was planning to do anyways. I was planning to do this. I just kept procrastinating. I kept saying when I get bigger, I want to keep doing the dairy and the unhealthy whey protein and whatever, eating junk. And eventually I'm going to get it together. And then the injury happened. I said, no, I got to lock in now. And so I knocked out all the junk. I started buying a bunch of herbal teas, healing herbs that I know can heal you, anti-inflammatory oils like black cumin seed oil, extra virgin olive oil. I started buying a bunch of fruits, cruciferous veggies, vegetables, and fruits with anthocyanins in it that are full of antioxidants and anti-inflammatory and all these things that can heal the body. I started intermittent fasting. I did a 5-day juice fast so that my body could go into autophagy and create stem cells to heal whatever was going on. Because that's what happens when you fast. If you do your research, y'all, I don't want to sit here talking forever. I've talked about this stuff in the past. But when you fast, your body goes into something that's called autophagy. Auto means eat. And auto means self. And phagy means eat. So it's self-eat. So when you fast, like you do a juice fast or even better, a water fast. And the reason I say better, I know you would think a juice fast is better because you're getting all these nutrients in. But a water fast is better because there's more autophagic activity where the body has nothing. It has no nutrients to feed off of. There are two different benefits to a juice fast and a water fast. Y'all, let me let this thing drive by. There are different benefits to a juice fast and a water fast. A juice fast, you're getting nutrients in while you're also getting autophagy, right? So the body is healing and repairing and you're also getting nutrients in. But with a water fast, it's just straight autophagic activity where the body has nothing to feed off of but itself. And so if you have tumors or diseased tissue or some sort of damaged cell in your body or area that needs repair, your body's going to get to work feeding off of the damaged cells, the damaged tissues. It starts to regenerate. It reboosts. It gives the immune system a boost and it regenerates your whole immune system. And stem cells are created. And so eventually what's going to happen is those stem cells are going to go anywhere in the body that needs repair. So I wanted to do a water fast is what I wanted to do, but I knew that would be intense to just hop straight into a water fast. So I did a juice fast. And I wanted some of those anthocyanins and antioxidants to get into my body anyway. So I did a 5-day juice fast, y'all. And while I was doing the 5-day juice fast, I also did intermittent fasting. So I had a window where I would drink the juices and then like hours of just fasting every day for 5 days. And after the 5th day, the bulge was gone. The swelling in my pelvic area was gone. And the pressure was gone. But there is still some sort of activity. I don't feel 100% like myself. There's still this thing where if I don't hold my stomach in, I feel like my bladder looks a little bit bloated. So I went to a second doctor. I went to the clinic. I finally got Medicaid. I was able to see a second doctor. I was showing her the stuff. And similar to the first doctor, she was telling me that my obliques look normal, that's how they're supposed to look. And with the bladder, she said, well, it was probably just a muscle strain is what she was telling me. So I said, well, to be safe, can you please do a pelvic scan because my bladder does look a little bloated to me. And so she said, okay, she set up a pelvic scan. And so I have an appointment for that. And then I have a follow-up appointment with her. But that's what's going on. The bulge is gone. The pressure is gone. The only symptom I'm still noticing is my bladder looks a little bit bloated if I don't hold my stomach in. And my obliques are still off and on, like especially after a lot of physical exertion, a little tight. And so I do wonder, is it just like a bad muscle strain that I started the repair process on? Or did I have some sort of pelvic organ prolapse that I started reversing? Because I've also been doing pelvic floor exercises. So I don't know. They're going to look at me and let me know what's going on. But I did make some major progress. It's to the point where I actually feel like I can start squatting heavier again. And I've been squatting again. I went off on a tangent, y'all. Oh my God, this keeps happening. This would probably be like 2 hours of talking just to get to what led to me making this video. This always happens, y'all. Because I'm being tortured 24/7 by countless individuals. And there's so much to talk about. And so then when I actually sit down and say, oh, I don't feel like making a video, but let me make a video. Then there's so much to say and so much venting to do. And then it's like, next thing you know, 2 hours went by and I'm still talking. And I haven't even talked about why I started the video to begin with. Anyways, y'all. So I have this whole routine. That's what led to the tangent that I do now. I changed my whole diet. I'm on a strict diet. I'm intermittent fasting. And I'm eating healthy. I'm pescatarian now. I'm still open into eating red meat once in a blue moon. But I'm pescatarian. I'm eating salmon. I eat eggs. No dairy. I'm not doing dairy anymore. And it's mainly just veggies. The potatoes that I put to the side of my salmon are purple and are full of anthocyanins. I eat broccoli to the side. I'm taking collagen peptides. I'm taking a bunch of supplements. Vitamin D, krill oil, magnesium, K2, dandelion root. All kinds of stuff, y'all. Turmeric powder to help with inflammation. Just taking care of myself. I mean, drinking natural juices. I'm not even buying juice from the store anymore. When I was buying juice, I was buying Arizona, like the green tea. But that still has, stuff in it. So I'm making my own juice now. And so I got up this morning to do my routine. I got up to make my eggs and make my tea. So when I went out there, the younger person in my close circle, one of the younger people, he's younger than me, family member, he lives out in the living room. We're in a smaller house now than in the old neighborhood. And the house has 3 bedrooms. And then there are 2 living rooms in the house. So he's staying in the back living room where the couch used to be, where my grandma had the couch and the TV set up. Excuse me, but he has no privacy. It's like open up. And anytime anybody's in the kitchen or in the main, in the dining area, you're in his space. And he's in yours, to be honest. So, every time I go there to make juice, he's sitting on the bed and it's like this awkward thing, kind of. But I'm so used to it now. It's just like I block out him being there, I'm just used to him sitting there. It's whatever. I still do my thing. I make my juice. I go out there and make my food, whatever. But he has no privacy. He doesn't have a bedroom like I do where I can close my door, or like the other person in my close circle does where she can close her door. So I remember going out there and I saw the sheet. And as soon as I saw the sheet, the birds started going, chirp, 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 chirp. You know how they like to create stuff and be weird and make you feel awkward while everybody's staring at you on camera. So they start going, chirp, chirp, chirp with the birds. Excuse me, I have such a headache, y'all. I don't know if they're hitting me with the energy weapon or what's going on. Every time, conveniently, when I'm making a video, I start getting a headache. And typically, I can hear when they're hitting me with the hum. I can hear it in my ear, but I'm not hearing it. But my head's hurting, and I do have technology in my body. Anyway, so they start making the noises with the bird drones outside, like chirp, chirp, chirp. So I remember thinking in my head, and I know they heard me think this. I said, okay, so what? I said, he doesn't have privacy. I mean, it's normal that he would put a sheet up. That's normal. I remember thinking that in my head. Mind you, he's on the phone with his girlfriend. He's been with this girl for I don't know how many months now. So long, the man to be going to her house and sleeping at her house. I don't give a shit. He's been with her for so freaking long. You know how many times he's been on the phone while I was out there cooking and I wasn't acting awkward? Now, mind you, sometimes it does happen when people are on the phone around me. It happened with my other brother when he was on the phone with his girlfriend. They were trying to make stuff about it. It happened with my sister when she was on the phone. It happens with my mom like crazy when she's talking on the phone about this situation that she had, this pending situation with her old job where she was teaching at. They relocated her to a new school because she was having drama at her old school. So every time I'm out there in the kitchen, of course, they make this weird psychological warfare thing that they do. When someone's on the phone having a conversation, they make it seem like everything the person's saying is about you, and they start doing noise campaigns in the background. And they stare at your expression while the person is having the conversation. So you start getting this awkward look sometimes, and you don't even necessarily give a rat's ass about the conversation. You know how many times it's happened to me? And I'd be looking weird and having this weird expression, and I don't give a shit about what you talking about. It happened in the facility with this dude. I talked about it already. I could have gave a rat's ass what that man was talking about. But because they did a little noise with the bird in the background while he was on the phone, and I'm sitting there awkwardly, this was, I'm not supposed to color in the book. I have to sit up and, so I'm sitting there trying to sit up, and he's on this conversation talking to this girl, and apparently she was a teacher too. I couldn't help but hear the conversation. So he's having this whole conversation with her, and because I'm getting the awkward look on my face, he starts inserting directed convo, horrible, mean stuff. I was just like, what did I do to this dude? And so I remember getting even more awkward. And it was weird with him because when I first I didn't want to talk about people in the facility. This will lead to me not getting back in. But I'm just saying what started with him in the first place, it was kind of odd in the first place because as far as I knew, him and I were okay. When I first got into the facility, I didn't really have much contact with him. They put me with a bunch of different guards. They never really put me with him like that. I used to see him off and on. I knew him as the dude with the big beard. I really know him like that. I think he might be around my age, and that's maybe why they did this day. But I remember there was a day where I met him, and then I was sitting with one of the other guards, that's a guy, and he called over, and he talked to me, and he said, hey, he said, you're so-and-so, right? I said, yeah. And he said, okay, I nice to meet you. Hopefully I get to see you one day or whatever. See you. I forgot what he said. I can't remember. I don't want to say the wrong thing. It was some brief conversation about us actually getting to see each other and talk again or something weird. I can't remember what the conversation was. It was brief and quick, and it happened one time. So that conversation happened, and I was like, okay, it was the day we were getting ice cream in the facility and stuff. So I was like, okay, whatever. I talked back with him. I just did a little laugh or whatever and hung up the phone. And then I had a second encounter with him. This was like months later. He came in. I was in the computer lab. This was, when I was acting awkward in there and stuff, because certain stuff had happened, and I made videos, and I said I'm not going to make videos about it in there anymore. I'm just only talking about this incident. I don't make videos about the facility. I'm only talking about this to show that this has happened before, where someone was talking about stuff that I didn't give a shit about, but I had this awkward look on my face because everybody's staring at me and they're making noises in the background. So anyway, I was sitting outside to eat, and they were doing noise campaigns in the road. They used to rev by when I was eating lunch, and I was sitting in the parking lot. I didn't have my car back then. So I remember getting up and thinking, what, let me go in the computer lab. And so I went to go in the computer lab, and when I went in there, he was already in there. Wait, hold up. Before I went in there and saw him in there, though, when I was heading out to sit outside in the parking lot, he had walked by me, and he did this kind of wave and smiled at me, and I think I had this mean expression on my face because it was like a rough day that day. And so I think I kind of just did this nod at him, and I had this mean expression on my face. And I remember just walking outside and sitting outside to eat. And then I came in because they're doing ref campaigns in the road and stuff, and I went to go into the computer lab, and he was in there eating food. And so I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to be in here and my brain ticking and the cameras and, ruin this man's lunch. So I remember just thinking, are you in here? I remembered asking him, are you in here? I wasn't saying it in a rude, disrespectful way, or like trying to make him get up and leave or anything. I was just asking him, I think I said, oh, you're in here? Or something like that. I made that comment because I was about to do a U-turn. I didn't want to ruin his lunch. And so I remember him just kind of doing this thing with his hand, and then he threw the food in the garbage, and then he left. And I don't know if after that created, I'm just in my brain trying to rack why the man started doing what he was doing. I can't put it together. Those are the only two encounters I had with him. I don't know him like that. Out of all the guards in there, like, he's one of the ones I had the least interactions with. One of the day guards I had the least interaction with. And then towards the latter stint of me being in there, like shortly before whatever happened, they put me to work with him. And it's just like, it was this weird thing. It was the day I worked with him, and then also a day where I was working in the unit right next to him, where he was doing directed convo. Like, he's on the phone with this female. It seemed like he had just started talking to her. And he's doing directed convo, and it was like harsh, horrible, mean stuff. I was like, what did I do to this man? I remember thinking, what the heck? So anyways, I was getting all these weird looks on my face while he was having the conversation, and I didn't give a crap about what he was talking about. I just felt uncomfortable, and the more awkward I looked, the more he started putting stuff in the conversation. I was like, oh my God. Anyway, so this is similar to what happened earlier with this person in my close circle. So they already did the stupidness when I saw the sheet was up. start chirping and chirping like he put the sheet up for me. It's for everyone. Everybody's out there and he doesn't have privacy. That is his bedroom. The living room is his freaking bedroom. So anyway, I just thought the thought in my head. I said, okay. I said, he has no privacy. I said, I would do that too. And so I remember he's having this conversation with his girlfriend, which I've been out there many times before while he was talking to her, and I didn't give a rat's ass. But I was making all these awkward faces because I felt uncomfortable now after they did what they did. And it's like the more awkward I was looking, it's like the more it was just like this weird thing that started happening. Like I remember I went in the fridge to get juice and he's doing this weird fake laugh. And I don't know if they were really having a conversation that was coincidental, because you have to understand when you're targeted, you get sensitized to certain things. And then I have all these people staring at me and they're making stuff out of everything too. It might not have even been what they thought it was, but he does do spiteful gang stalking stuff. So I truly don't know. It really could have been him doing the spiteful gang stalking stuff because he does it all the time. So I remember I went in the fridge to grab my juice and he's doing this fake laugh with her and they're talking about some stupid crap that I don't care about, right? Some stupid shit they were looking at. And he's doing this laugh. Some laugh he's trying to do with her, right? So I'm going to the fridge to grab the juice. He started doing the laugh again. So then I go in the kitchen and I poured it up and I started taking my garlic. That's part of the regimen I do. And I chewed the garlic up and then I'm drinking it with the juice. He does the laugh again. So I don't know if he was doing it because of the juice, because he was doing it so much. Even after I put the juice up, he was still doing that annoying laugh. I think he was just having some moment with his female. I don't even know if it was his girlfriend or if he's talking to someone new. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's the same girl he'd been talking to. Anyway, so he was doing the annoying laugh all morning. He was having some moment with this girl, man. I finished doing what I was doing out there. You could say I wasn't bothered. I just had the awkward look on my face, which happens with my mom. It happened with my other brother. It happened with this dude at the job that started doing horrible direct. He really was doing direct to convo. There was no answer for us about it. It used to happen actually a lot in the facility. If someone would have a conversation and I'm sitting there, it's just like because they're staring at me and constantly making it seem like the person's doing directed convo. It's like I just automatically start getting this stupid look on my face and I could give a rat's ass what you're talking about. I don't care. Anyway, so I continued to do my thing out there because I didn't care. And I made my eggs and I made my tea and I did what I was doing and I came in here and I was set up nice and I moved on for the moment because I'm so used to that happening to me at this point now. Look at them cutting the grass and stuff because they know what I'm saying is true. They're demented in this neighborhood. So anyway, I sat down with the tea and the eggs and I put the eggs in front of me and I went to take a fork full of egg. And as soon as I went to bite the egg off the fork, the garbage truck revs by. Now, mind you, a few moments prior, they had already passed and collected the garbage off of the street. So it was gang stalking. So that already annoyed me. So I was just like, are you serious? I said, it's like I have no privacy. I said, I wish I could be like him and put a sheet up and get privacy. It's like, no matter what I put up, they're all staring at me, the whole island. So I remember that started the annoyance. And then I go to grab my tea to take a sip of my tea. I'm hearing the neighbor. This whole street is lit, y'all. It's like 3 houses on the end of the street here that antagonize me all day long. The person across the street, there's somebody that never leaves the house that hammers all day long. And it's like they have random bipolar moments because sometimes they're not hammering. And then they just get started and they'll go for hours on end hammering. It's the house directly to the right of me. And remember, I told you all these houses are extremely close together. So you have no privacy as it is, much less to be targeted with cameras on you and people purposely antagonizing you. The house directly to the right, there's this older man that stays there. I think he's my dad's age, right? In the 60s, that type of age. He'll stay in the yard for hours antagonizing me. He goes to work during the daytime, thank God. But he'll stay in that yard for hours by the gate just making weird noises. Like he'll make this weird snickering noise and you can tell it's like a forced fake snicker. Like he just wants me to hear it so he could get my attention and get this angry response. And he'll stay there for hours on end doing it. Then I started noticing this female in the yard. I never used to see her there before. I noticed this female there, and I think this tall, older man. I started noticing more people. If they were there, they were hiding in the house. I was not seeing them before. The only person I used to be seeing in that yard was the old man. Not old man. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say old man. I did not mean to say that. I did not mean. You know how they like to make it seem like I don't respect my elders. Gaslighting. I meant to say the older man. 60s isn't old to me. You have to understand I'm 34 now. Time flies like this. Everybody's got to get old if God spares your life. To me, 60 isn't old. When I start feeling like you're old, not to be disrespectful, like I would say 75 and up, that's where like I feel like you're old. I've already seen this 70-year-old lady. I keep sending it to my parents. Fit as a fiddle. Her arms are toned and everything. She looks really good. And she's doing the same lifestyle I'm doing. Actually, even more so, she's vegan. She's not doing any meat. And she works out. But to me, like when you're in your 60s, I feel like that's just like the threshold or the doorway to becoming old. That's why they call that the beginning of being elderly. Like, I don't think that's old. I see people walking around and hopping around and stuff at that age. I just don't feel like that's old like that. I feel like 75 and up is where you truly are old. So anyway, I didn't mean to call him the old man. I meant to say the older man is what I meant to say. That's all I was seeing in that yard. All of a sudden, I started seeing this taller, older man sometimes there, and then this, like, female I started seeing there off and on. Like, I don't really see her all the time, but sometimes I start seeing her. And I noticed now he's gone from work. He's gone to work. I'm still hearing noise campaigns over there. It's like he recruited them or something, whoever he recruited over there. But they're doing noise campaigns in that yard. And it's like they be sitting, staying in the yard. Like, they don't go in their house and relax or whatever. It's like I cannot get a break. You know how annoying that is? And then it's like, obviously, I'm going to flip out. That's common sense. And say nasty, mean things. And then you'll gaslight me about it. So anyway, I went to grab my drink. I'm already, like, annoyed that I had this reaction out there. And I don't give a shit what he's talking about, you know. It's really them doing the noise campaigns and knowing that they're staring at me. So I'm already irritated that I had this stupid reaction out there. But I don't care. I done moved on from the moment. It's happened to me so many times before. So I sit down. I'm comfortable. I'm about to eat my egg. The garbage truck revving by. I'm about to take a bite of my eggs. Then I go to take a sip of my tea. I'm hearing snickering in the yard. And I know the moment that happened out there just now where I myself wasn't sure if it was gang stalking or not. So I remember getting real annoyed and I started saying some nasty things about the people in this yard because it's mean, antagonizing, bullying stuff. So I can bully back too. So why when I bully back do I get such reprimand for it? It's not fair. It reminds me so much of what happened in my old gym. If I bully back, then I'm the villain, I'm the bad guy, like the person's a victim. Like they weren't bullying me first. Really? Because I refuse to be the bully victim and sit there and let you, and they send stuff with the technology, everyone was afraid of her. The bully, the this, the that. Huh? You're the ones bullying me and I'm just bullying back. I'm not a punk. Anyway. So that's what happened here now. Just now, I just started to really go ham on these people here in this yard because I'm tired of it. I'm tired of not having privacy and I'm tired of the dumb shit. Every moment being recorded. And if I have a slight reaction to what you're doing in the background, then you're going to gaslight me about it. That's why they're cutting grass right now. Notice you're hearing your grass cutting all of a sudden. Anytime I say stuff that makes sense, that's all they can do. Is cut grass and make stupid noises to try to shut you down so they can't hear the truth that you're saying. Anyway, so that's what happened. I started going ham.com on the people in this yard next door. And then I went to play basketball, went on my phone to play basketball, and I noticed they played against me. Remember I told you they like to play against me with sensitizing things, right? Like sometimes it'll be antagonizing names or avatars. They played against me with a player that had a shirt that said security. It's almost like a hint that I'm going to stay doing security and I'm not going to get my job back. When they've been hinting hardcore for the last 2-3 weeks that I was going to get my job back. They even gave me every night on my schedule is at the old facility. I've been doing everything right. I've been going on time. I've been sitting up in the chair and making sure to look every car that comes through. I'm paying attention to everything that's going on. I remember the names of the people, everything. Now they're threatening me with the technology because I had a reaction to abuse and humiliation. And antagonization. It's not fair. It's not right. And so that's what made me go on this whole rant about what led to where I'm at right now anyway. And where I used to be and how easy it was for me to get jobs and what my resume looks like and what I'm dealing with now. It's like I'm begging for a job and it's like I'm doing everything right. And it's like if I have a reaction to abuse, then I'm going to get threatened about the job. That's not fair. I went on a whole tangent. I've probably been talking for 2 hours just to talk about the unfair shit that I am dealing with. It's not right. The fact that I'm even still suffering and being watched on camera by all these people. 6 years later for a text message. It's just not fair. Anyways, y'all, so that's what this video is. It's like a rant / I guess, retelling of what started the targeting because I'm no bueno. I don't understand. Not good. No bueno. I don't get it. I don't comprehend. No comprehende. I don't understand. You heard people talking in the neighborhood getting active now? So I'm dealing with y'all. Anyway, I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace out. I can't do